Dr. Maya Sion Tzidkiyahu from the Mitvim Institute. The French far right appears to be on the cusp of power. This was quite a dramatic development, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed. A very dramatic development, very unexpected if you think that it's the result of the elections to the European Parliament. This is the first time that the European Parliament elections have created such a destabilizing effect in one of the two leading countries of the EU.
And what the other country was Germany?
Yes, indeed. It's the German-France axis that is usually, leading the European integration process.
So the National Rally, coming back to France, they're now seeking an absolute majority in the Parliament, but we will only know if this will happen after next Sunday's runoff election. The New Popular Front and the Macron camp are working together in order to try to prevent this. Explain to our listeners how they can stop the far right, or how they're trying to stop the far right ahead of Sunday's runoff.
Well, France is divided to 577 districts, and what we've seen yesterday was that the major candidates are the ones that are going to compete next week in the second round. And so wherever there is a district in which there are more than two candidates, and they are coming from those three parties that you mentioned, what we see is that the new left party and the party of Macron are going to decide who among themselves will run against the National Rally of Marine Le Pen. And so what they try to do is to gather enough momentum for one of their candidates to run and to beat the National Rally candidate. And so that may bring them to enough candidates that would be winning and to the absolute majority that they need. They need 289 out of the 577 to have a majority at the Assemblée Nationale. I'm not sure they'll be able to do that, but we'll have to wait and see until Sunday.
One thing's for sure, President Macron's gamble in announcing a snap election has failed dramatically. Is he now a lame duck president?
Absolutely, he's a lame duck. Look, he's been a lame duck for quite a while, but the lameness has grown enormously. And indeed, there's no way he's going to come out of those elections in a good manner, be it the left that would win, because still, his own party is losing, right? So he's going to be a lame duck anyway. The question is, will he be able to form a new government? And still, it's not going to be a cohabitation government in which if Marine Le Pen wins or, Bardella will be the next prime minister, then it's going to be, there's going to be a rivalry between the president and the government, which makes France unfunctional. And so what we see now is that Macron is actually joining forces with the left. This is his original political party where he comes from the socialist, but there is also the extreme left, which I guess he feels quite uncomfortable with, but it's still not the far right. So it's a choice between two devils, I would say.
And what about for the French Jewish community? We know, of course, the anti-Semitic past of the National Front, of Marine Le Pen's father, and the far left group is also fanatically anti-Israel. There's Palestinian flags at all their protests. Would you be concerned now if you were a Jew living in France?
It's a hard question to ask because in France you do not know people. There is no differentiation according to religion. You cannot count voters according to that or do polls according to religion. So what you can do is look at demography and where the Jews are living and try to see how in those areas the voting pattern was. And I'm not sure about the result right now, but I think many Jews probably still vote for the center for Macron, but many of them also may be voting for Marine Le Pen because she is the only one, unlike Mélenchon from the left, that was standing up against anti-Semitism. So she was actually standing up against her father's legacy, being a neo-Nazi or fascist, and marching at the very first row of the anti-Semitism rally that took place in France a few months ago. So she's trying to gain the trust of the Jewish community in France. Obviously, many still cannot make themselves vote for her, and I think rightly so. But when you see the alternative and you see how the left is so anti-Israeli and to some extent or to a great extent even encouraging the new anti-Semitism by Muslims or by hard leftist Palestinians, then I guess you have to choose, and the choice is really not easy. So I wouldn't like myself to be in that position. They still have the center, but again, sometimes you don't have a choice. You're living in a district in which the second round will force you to choose between the hard left and the hard right.
And finally, what about the National Rally's position on Israel? Because a lot of the far-right parties in Europe, as you know, are pro-Israel, or at least portray themselves as pro-Israel.
This is exactly what Marine Le Pen has done. Together with this, marching against anti-Semitism, she has hugged Israel. Amichai Shikli, the Minister of Diaspora in Israel, was hugging her as well in a joint meeting that they had. So it's not only about what Marine Le Pen is doing vis-a-vis Israel, it's also what the Israeli government and ministers are doing with Marine Le Pen. I would ask the same question.
Do you think Israel is making a mistake when it endorses these far-right groups and openly supports them?
Personally, yes, definitely. And I would like to look at the bigger picture. Okay, it's not a personal view. It's just looking at the international arena. Putin is now, the president of Russia is now sitting in his chamber and completely satisfied with what's going on in France, because that means the weakening of Europe. That means the weakening. Also, if you look at Germany, then Olaf Scholz have taken a blow in the European Parliament elections. His whole coalition has taken a blow. So now Macron is taking this huge blow, and this German-French axis is being weakened. And that means that Europe is weakened. We are left with Donald Tusk in Poland, with Giorgia Meloni, who's also extreme right, or populist, or Eurosceptic right in Italy. And then Europe is actually falling before the elections in the US, in which we may get Trump. So the whole Western world in which Israel is dependent on looks very different than what we would have assumed a few months ago. And I think that is really troubling for me as an Israeli who is reliant not only on the U.S., but also economically and in some respect also militarily on Europe. So Marine Le Pen is not anti-Israeli. That's a good thing. But Europe being so weak is a bad thing for Israel.